So, Tech Tuesday, it is Sway Bar 101. The reason we're doing this is because we get a ton of questions still. We even have videos about it all over our YouTube. The best way to call one of these, or the right term, would be an anti-sway bar. It stops sway, or it stops body roll. That's what these are designed to do. Some people call them torsion bar. That's not 100% accurate, but it doesn't really matter. Everybody gets it. We call them bars for short. So more bar, less bar. Do you have a bar? You got a front bar, you got a rear bar. That's what we go with. But the reason that sway bars are important on off-road vehicles, especially on high speed, not so much for rock crawling as it is for desert or trail or dunes, is they stop body roll. And these UTVs have a ton of travel. The more travel you have, the more body roll typically you're going to get. If you got 2 feet of wheel travel, that's a lot of movement side to side. And as these things get more powerful and more traction, more tire, then they're going to hook in a corner and they're going to have body roll as they get into that corner. If it's got a nice berm or tracked out, then you can roll the car really easy. So how do bars function? Sway bars, the easiest way to do that is let's say that this is bolted to the chassis, all right? These are the 2 frame mounts, and this bar can cycle vertically up and down, and that would be like a car going through the bumps, flat and level, okay? This is not restricting any travel. It's not hurting anything. Doesn't even have to be something that we tune for in shock setup, as long as these are fairly easy to move. When the bar comes into play is when you're not going over things flat and level. When you come into a corner, let's say you're going to turn right, and the car leans to the outside, what happens is one side of the bar is stationary and the other side is trying to be bent vertically. As the car leans, the suspension on the left side or outside of the turn gets lower, which tries to push the bar up. So this bar is trying to twist in the middle. Each end is in different locations depending on how much body roll you've got. That twist from pre-bend or straight spot to straight spot is what you call rate, or where you're going to get the sway bar rate that is going to stop you from having that body roll that can cause you to roll a car real easy. Now, again, this does not affect anything if the car is flat and level over straight stuff. Jumping, whoops, that you might be going straight through, any kind of flat chop chatter, there's no effect. Where this is an effect is when you lean the car in a corner, or it can also be a big effect when you want wheel independence for rock crawling, and we'll go over that here shortly. But since this bar is twisting, the amount of twist or the amount of rate or the amount of stiffness that this bar has will directly affect how much body roll you have. So if the bar is small in diameter and longer, it's going to have a very low rate. Let's just throw out, like, say, 150 to 200 pound rate. That means you've got 150 to 200 pounds of resistance on the bar, and that's what's stopping that body roll. As the bar gets larger in diameter, there's more material in this straight spot. As you can take a look at a rear sway bar on an XP, much more weight in the back of these cars than there is in the front, and that's why rear bars tend to have a lot more meat on them, because you want a lot more spring rate to stop the body roll where there's more weight in the vehicle. So obviously it's going to be a lot harder to twist this thick one than it is to twist the small diameter material, and that weight means you get more rate and more body roll resistance. Sway bar diameter, the material itself, diameter of the material affects the rate. For instance, on this bar right here, 1.25 inch diameter with this length of an arm, we'll go into that in a minute, you're looking at about 500 pound spring rate on the back hole, 600 and 700 pounds. So almost 100 pound change. It's actually a little less, it's about 10%. It's like 50, 65 and 70 pounds increase between the holes. And the more poundage or the more spring rate, the less body roll you have. Now, we've got multiple bars for multiple vehicles. The size and shape of the bars are all dependent upon manufacturer, whether that's Polaris, Can-Am, or anybody else. And they're building a bar that fits the suspension design in the chassis. They have clearance issues that they have to get around. This is a front bar on an X3, Can-Am X3. It's a very short bar, and it's mounted very narrow right off the pivot points of the A-arms, and whereas this is a bar off of a XP Turbo, this bar is mounted on a much wider position on the arms. It's got a longer arm than the Can-Am. These tend to have zero issues. The X3s are well outside or very close to the design parameters engineering-wise for a sway bar with the amount that they have to twist. There's a lot of load on this bar, a lot more load than there is in Polaris design. And the Can-Ams tend to have link issues, failures on the links, shearing hardware because there's a ton of load on them. So a good set of links on the front of an X3 is a must. And a good sway bar on the front of an X3 is definitely a must. Mitch?
SMP wants to know about the KRX. He said, does the KRX have lots of body roll?
The KRX has a lot of body roll due to shock setup and spring setup factory, but as you start changing spring rates, then the body roll gets less. But a KRX, in my opinion, is a good candidate for links because it will stiffen the system up, and also an adjustable bar if you can buy one. The problem is, I don't think that there's a bar available for the KRX yet, but we are in the middle of designing some parts for you. Matt?
Andy wants to know, when is a bar too stiff? How do you balance body roll versus tip over?
Okay, so bar tuning is very important. It's hard to describe. That's why all of our bars are adjustable, so you can run them stiffer and softer depending on your driving style and or how much weight is in the vehicle. But typically, the more weight that you have in the car, the more sway bar is required to stop that extra weight from swinging around in a corner. You know that you don't have enough sway bar in the car when you enter a corner and it just dives on the front outside corner of the car and it picks that back tire up off the ground. That extra body roll that's just compressing the front corner and extending the back corner. If you pick the tire up, it's not enough bar on that car. If you come into the same corner and you turn it, the car stays flat and it just pushes straight through the corner, it doesn't hook the corner and turn, then the pushing typically is a sign of too much sway bar, too much bar. It could be too much bar in the front, it could be too much bar in the back. That's where adjustability comes in. You can start changing the front, changing the rear, and find out where it likes to be, and you'll kind of hone in on it. But typically, turn the wheel and it doesn't turn, it pushes forward, it has no body roll, that's too much bar. And turn in, it turns great, but it picks up the back tire and drops the nose, that's not enough bar. So there you go.
We had 2 questions for bars for the XP Pro and the Turbo S, which
I got 2 of those questions too.
Pretty excited because we have
what do you got there, Mitch?
Something cool for the Pro coming. We actually have all the parts here. We have them made. We have to do the install video on them, which that same product is going to be used across the line for every single Model 2 here soon.
So
once all of that in development and all the stuff for every other car comes, that will be released. So yes, there is something cool. I'm not going to say when it's going to come out.
It is a new product that no one else has seen, and we just received the patent on it, so we can start finishing all of our design work and production and instructions, and you guys will have this here soon.
Done.
Yeah. Yep. Matt?
Also, they want to know about a sway bar for the YXZ.
Yes, I was going to get to that. Greatest car of all time. Justin, we got to know.
So there's no sway bar available from us on the rear of a YXZ because we found that the factory sway bar is adequate for almost all use. But the front of that car needs one, and we do have a bolt-on sway bar for a YXZ. On the website, you can go right now and get it. We have them in stock. I hope we have them in stock. Pretty sure we have them in stock.
We'll have to check with Miss Lauren.
Okay, but more than likely.
Yeah. I do have an off question here from Brad. He said, how often should we grease X3 wheel bearings?
Never. If you grease X3 wheel bearings, they will fail. The X3 wheel bearing, we've done a ton of testing on them. Leave them factory. Do not add grease. If you add grease to that, they will run hotter and they will fail faster. The best thing you can do is change them. Run them factory stock and replace them when they get too much play. That's basically what you want to do. Do not grease them.
Just like the rod ends.
Yes, I can tell you from personal experience because we did a lot of testing 4 years ago on bearings.
It's a good question. Super awesome rockin' dad. After you reset your ride height when almost 2 inches, is an upgraded sway bar recommended?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you raise the car, I mean, anytime you raise it, it's going to have more body roll. It's going to be a little bit more top heavy. The center of gravity has been raised. Typically, you're going to need more sway bar to control the body roll that you've gained. So a car sitting 10 inches off the ground is going to have less body roll, or it's going to have less tendency to roll over at 10 inches than it does at 15 inches. It's going to have more tendency when it sits higher. So that's another reason to have bars behind you too, Chase. It's another reason to do aftermarket sway bar. When you start raising ride heights up to where they want to be, especially with spring kits, it's a help, it's a benefit. And everybody's driving style is different. I know people that are plenty fast with no sway bar on the front of an X3. I know a lot of guys that are fast with sway bars on the front of an X3. I know if you take the bar off the back of anything, X3, Polaris, Turbo S, doesn't matter, it's pretty much undrivable and you're going to wreck the car. Unless you're going 10 miles an hour over rock, there's just no reason to take one off. You guys should try it sometime. Don't do it because I told you to, but just try it real slow and be careful not to wreck your car. You'll find out how much work a sway bar does for you when you lose the back one.
That kind of answers Mike Dubb's question. When running trails in AZ like boulders or up in Crown King, should the sway bar be removed or keep it on?
I would keep it on, and I would leave the rear one on. You might disconnect the front if you're going to rock crawl all day long, but I don't think I would take the rear one off ever, because in Arizona, the worst rock trails are not slow. They're pretty much 20, 30 miles an hour all the time. I don't know where you're going to go that's 15 miles an hour all day long. I don't think it exists.
A pretty popular question with the Walker Evans links. Are you able to run them with our sway bar?
Yes. So here's how a Walker Evans link works. It is a miniature shock absorber. It has about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of movement in the link before it becomes fully solid. That movement in the link is, let's just say it's 3/4 of an inch. Well, that's 3/4 of an inch that the sway bar does not work until the car leans enough to take up that gap on the link, and then once the link becomes solid, then the sway bar starts to work. Now, those are awesome in rock crawling, rough trail, super slow situations. If you are desert racing or play car or in the dunes, Walker links are going to add a ton of body roll, and you're going to have to learn how to drive the car again, and the thing's going to be tipping excessively around corners. Another factor is length of the arm on the end of these, depending on how long they are, also changes the rate. So let's just say that these two are the same diameter material. They're actually not, but let's just pretend that they are. This bar with a shorter arm on it is going to be stiffer or have more spring rate and less body roll than this bar, because it's got about twice as long of an arm on it. The longer the arm, the more leverage on the bar, the softer the system is. So this bar on the vehicle will act softer than this bar on the vehicle. That is leading into the adjustability. So Chase, if you can show these, most of our bars are very adjustable, at least 3 holes. And the farther away the hole that you use is away from the pivot point of the bar, the softer the bar, the more body roll you have. The closer that you move a link, so obviously a link's attached here, the closer you move a link to the pivot point, the stiffer the bar gets, the less body roll you have. That is, there's some formulas for that to figure out what you have. I'm not going to bore you with the math, but trust me, the farther forward you get, the stiffer it gets. Next, overall width makes a difference. The wider the bar, the softer it is. The narrower the bar, the stiffer it is. Arm length, we talked about that. The longer the arm, the softer the bar is, the more body roll you get. Material does make a difference. Better material twists less. Better material can twist farther without breaking, and that's actually a good one that we need to talk about. People ask us all the time why we run a solid bar versus a hollow bar with splines and a bolt-on arm. The reason is hollow bars have a shelf life. They will only cycle a certain amount of times. So let's just say it's 1 million times and the bar fails. A solid bar can have 6, 7, 8 times more cycle time. So a solid bar versus a hollow bar, the solid bar will always last longer. Even if they're the same rate, identical, it might go 7 or 8 million cycles before it fails. So we run a solid bar for longevity so our customers don't have failures. Also, A splined bar where the arm bolts onto it, the splines are a weak spot on the arm. If it's an aluminum arm, typically you're going to strip the splines out over time. Maybe 6 months, a year and 6 months, just depends. But those are throwaway items on race cars. They get swapped out every year or two before they fail. So we don't want those failures with our customers buying bars. We want bars that are going to last the lifetime of the car, if not longer. So we run a solid bar that's one piece and pressed on the ends. Now, a hollow bar, bolted on, billet arms, looks bitchin', and we can certainly make them. And for visual, that's awesome, but they just don't last. They also don't twist as far. A hollow bar has a certain amount of twist to it. All the diameters and wall thickness plays into effect. Let's just say it can twist 90 degrees and not fail and come back. Well, a solid bar, if a hollow bar goes 90 degrees, a solid bar will go 120 before it fails. So you can stuff the front of the car into the base of a G out of a dune, crooked, and run the right side tire all the way up past fender and the left side tire all the way out. And with a solid bar, not break it. With a splined hollow bar, you can snap it. It just depends on how far you twisted it and which car and the design and geometry, all that kind of good stuff. Engineering, weird, math. Things that affect bar selection, the heavier the car is, the more sway bar you're going to need to stop body roll. The higher the weight is on the car, like a luggage rack, the more you're going to want more sway bar on it to stop body roll. The lighter the car, the less bar you can run. The lighter the bar can be and still stop body roll. Terrain, rock crawling, you want less bar. Desert and dunes, you want more bar. The faster you drive and the more rutted and bermed the course is you're racing or driving, the trails you're driving, the more bar you're going to want, because the car can get up against the berm and pinch over, and you might need more bar to stop that. So these things are tunable. They're tunable to your driving style, your vehicle, the weight, and where you drive. That's why they're adjustable. So try not to buy any sway bars that have one hole in them. You're kind of be pigeonholed into what they think is good, may not be what you need as a driver. Links, here's view. The important thing about links is that you have a good rod end, upper and lower. We did a rod end video just about 3 or 4 videos ago, so go back and check out what makes a good one and a bad one. But you gotta have good, large rods to make sure you do not have any failures, you don't have any movement, and you don't have any squeaks. These are a culprit for squeaking big time, because everybody sells links with really crappy rod ends.
Size and quality matters, people.
It does, especially in this case. Now, sometimes the factory link uses a flexible bushing on the top and the bottom. That bushing, when it moves, adds body roll to your vehicle. So just by buying good solid link like this, you can eliminate a lot of body roll on certain vehicles. Not every one of them, because like an X3 has a good movable link. It doesn't have much movement in it, but some of the early XPs have a rubber bushing and they have a ton of movement in them. So a link will help a lot on the earlier vehicles and a little less on the newer stuff. Also, last I think is driving style, you guys. If you drive harder, you're gonna probably want more bar. If you drive harder, you have a stiffer shock setup. If you drive harder, you're gonna have more spring. All of which are gonna stop some body roll on their own. You may have to add some more bar as well, just depends.